Hello, I'm Tom Lee, and this is Yale Center for British Art at Home. I love to talk to students and families in the galleries of the Yale Center for British Art and find out what they think and notice about the paintings and sculptures that we have on display there. But even when the museum is closed, you can still enjoy hundreds of artworks by visiting the website www.britishart.yale.edu. And there you'll find all kinds of great pictures, paintings, old and new, sculptures that you can look at and discuss with your family. In these programs, we pick one artwork and we look at it in detail, and then we pair it up with a story, a folk tale, or a myth. Today, we're going to talk about a painting called The Bard. This might be one of my very favorite paintings in the Yale Center for British Art galleries. It was painted by John Martin in the year 1817. And there's a lot to look at in this picture. There's a lot happening. This is a copy of John Martin's painting, The Bard, that I printed out on my home computer. I downloaded the picture from the website and I printed it out. And you can do the same thing and have your own copy to look at and sketch at home. The more you look, the more you'll see. I'm going to be quiet for about 1 minute, and I'm going to let you look carefully at different parts of the painting, The Bard. What's going on in the painting, The Bard? John Martin painted this picture to illustrate a very famous poem. And the poem told a story that some people thought was true, but now we know was really just a legend. But it had to do with a real king. His name was Edward I, and he was king of England. But he took over the country of Wales, and he built many castles all around Wales to let the people of Wales know that he was the king now. And he really wanted to control the culture of Wales. And he thought that the people who really understood the culture of the country were the bards. The bards were the men and women who knew the stories, who knew the history, who knew the poems and the songs and the myths. And they were the people that held the culture of their land. And King Edward I decided if he was going to be in charge of Wales, then all of the bards should be destroyed. And he sent the army out to capture and destroy the bards. And in this picture, we see the very last bard left in the country of Wales. And he's raising up his hand to curse the king and to curse the army. This probably didn't really happen, but it's a great story and a great poem by Thomas Gray called The Bard. I'm going to tell you a story that comes from Wales, and it's about another bard, a real person named Taliesin. Taliesin was probably the greatest bard who ever lived in Wales. He lived hundreds of years ago, but we still have some of his poems and songs today. And this is a story that was told about how the great bard Taliesin was born. Once upon a time, not your time, not my time, not anyone's time, but once upon a time, there lived a witch, and her name was Ceridwen, and she knew many magic spells. And she had a son, and I'm sorry to say her son was evil and ugly. And of all her spells, Ceridwen hoped to have one spell that might turn her son into a handsome young man. But she didn't have such a magic spell. But she did know a spell that could make her son become enlightened. Her son would have great wisdom. Her son would be able to predict the future. Her son would know many things. Now the spell was this. Ceridwen had to gather different herbs growing in the forests and the fields, a different one on each night for 1 year. And then she had to put all of these herbs into a great iron cauldron and let them bubble and boil and simmer for 1 year. And she could never stop stirring, and she could never let the fire go out. At the end of 1 year, the magic spell said, 3 drops of this herb mixture would fly out of the pot, and whoever they struck on the forehead would become enlightened, filled with wisdom. And so the witch began to work her magic spell. Every day for 1 year, she gathered herbs from the fields and the forests. She filled her cauldron with these herbs and water, and she set a fire beneath the pot and let the cauldron bubble and simmer and boil. And she stirred and she stirred. But this was weary work. And after several months of stirring and making sure the fire did not go out, she saw passing by a young lad, a boy. His name was Gwion Bach. And she said to him, "You, come here, I have work for you. Take this stick and stir this pot round and round." Well, Gwion Bach was hungry and he needed the food that the witch gave him. And so he set to work and he stirred the pot and stirred. And he listened and he learned about the magic spell and how one day when a year had passed, the 3 drops would fly from the pot and strike whoever on the forehead and make them filled with enlightenment. And so he stirred and he waited and he listened and he watched until the 12 months came to an end. And when they did, the pot began to vibrate. The pot began to hum. And Ceridwen said, "The time is now, the time is now." And she took her son and she put him in front of the pot. And the pot began to screech, and the pot began to scream, and the pot cracked open, and all of the water poured out, except 3 drops that flew through the air. But before they could strike the witch's son on the forehead, Gwion Bach pushed him out of the way. He said, "I stirred the pot. Let me get the enlightenment." And he did. The 3 drops struck his forehead. And Ceridwen the witch, she was furious. She turned to Gwion Bach and she came towards him, and Gwion Bach was thinking to himself, "Oh, if only I could escape, if only I knew how to turn into a rabbit." And suddenly he realized he did. Because now he was enlightened. He knew many things. And he was able to turn himself into a rabbit and run away from the witch. And he ran quickly. But the witch, she knew spells of her own, and she transformed into a wolf. And the wolf went running after the rabbit. And the rabbit ran here, and the rabbit ran there, and the rabbit ran to the edge of a pond just as the wolf was about to capture it. And the little rabbit thought in its enlightened mind, I know how to become a fish. And he did. The rabbit jumped into the pond and transformed into a fish. But Ceridwen transformed into a pike, a great fish with sharp teeth, and she went chasing after the little fish. And the fish swam and was almost exhausted when the fish thought, I know, I'll turn into a bird. And out of the water came a dove, and the dove flew high into the air. But the witch transformed again from a pike into an eagle. And the eagle flew after the dove, and the poor bird, was growing weak from flying and thought, what can I become next? And the dove looked down, and there was a barnyard, and in the barnyard was a great mound of wheat. And the bird thought, I know, I will become 1 grain of wheat. And he did. And the grain of wheat fell onto the pile. And the little grain of wheat thought, that witch will never find me now. Well, the hawk circled around and around thinking, and then the hawk transformed into a chicken, a hen. And the hen came to the pile of wheat and began to peck. Peck, peck, pecking here, peck, peck, pecking there, gobbling down the grains of wheat until she came to the 1 grain of wheat that was Gwion-bach. She swallowed it. And then she thought, now I'll never hear from Gwion-bach again. But she was wrong. Can you guess what happened? There was 1 more transformation in the witch's belly. Gwion-bach transformed from a grain of wheat into a baby. And in 9 months, the baby was born. And the witch, she looked at this baby, and the baby was beautiful. The baby was shining. And she said, this child has a shining brow. And in Welsh, the word shining brow are Taliesen. And that became his name, the boy's name, because he was so filled with knowledge and wisdom and poetry and enlightenment. He was called Taliesen. But the witch, she was still evil. She was still cruel. And she said, I cannot keep this child about me. And she put the baby into a basket. And she put the basket in a river. And she pushed it off. And she let it travel down the river. And the story says that the basket traveled for many miles and many days. But a fisherman pulled the basket out of the water and found the little baby. And the baby was so wise, it could already talk, and said, take me home, fisherman. I will bring you good luck. I am Taliesen of the shining brow, and when I grow up, I will be the greatest bard that Wales has ever known. And that's what happened. Maybe. At least, that's what the story says. I hope you enjoyed the story of Taliesin. And I hope you'll make a sketch and send it to us at the Yale Center for British Art. We'd love to see your drawing. You can sketch from your screen at home, or you can print a copy of the picture out from the website. And take your time. There's a lot to draw here. And while you're sketching, think about the phrase, knowledge is power. Have you ever heard anyone say that before? It's kind of a famous saying, knowledge is power. So sketch your picture and give a little thought to that phrase. Do you think the picture and the phrase connect at all? If you do, we'd love to know why. Maybe you can write about it. Do you remember when Bach transformed into the baby and had his name changed to Taliesen? And that means shining brow, because he was enlightened. As you sketch the picture and think about it, is there anything in the picture that connects to enlightenment? What would you show in a picture to depict those two ideas? When students visit the Yale Center for British Art, or when we visit students in their schools, we like to do something called sketch, think, write. Sketching can help you think, and thinking can help you sketch, and writing can help you think, and writing can help you sketch. So we like to do all three things together: sketch, think, and write. What other animals could Ceridwen the witch and Bach the boy have become? Do some sketching and thinking and writing and make up another transformation for each of those characters. Sketch it, think it, and write about it. We'd love to see your pictures and read your writing, and you can send them to us in an email at ycba.education@yale.edu. Thanks for listening. Come back again another day for another story from Yale Center for British Art at home.